Hey, I'm back. Uh, we're going to get into the win. I'm going to take a little bit longer with this one in case you have some questions. So if you have questions in the feed, I'll be able to answer them live because I know I'm putting out a lot of information and I want to slow down at this point because I really want you to have the opportunity to understand timelines. Um, when I was writing Tennessee Mountain Man, my editor, she stopped editing and she called me. She said, "You're all over the damn place with this. I'm losing track of who's where and where is when and when is how. And is this a week? Is this 2 weeks? What is this?" So timelines are really important. I posted the slide for you guys to take a peep at. I don't know if you can look at the slide and see the live feed at the same time. But if you have questions about anything that I've posted thus far, you can go ahead and post those now, and I'll start answering them as we go along. Now, let's talk about the when. The when is the period of time that the story takes place. Okay. You can look at time as past, present, and future. Okay. If you're writing a book in the present tense, it's fine. There's no problem with that because everything is relatable as to what's going on now in our current climate, in our current atmosphere. Um, you can see that Simone says you can see the picture if you minimize the video. Okay. What I've got in front of you is not only a timeline, but time itself. Like I was saying, if you're working in the present, that's no problem. But if you're setting a story that may be in the 80s or in the 70s, you have to keep in mind that women then are much different than women now. In the 80s, some of the things that women do now on a first date, you didn't do until you had a ring on your finger. If the story is set in the 70s or the 60s, a lot of things that women are doing now on a first date, you didn't do until you was married. Okay? So those kind of things you have to keep in mind, as well as lingo. You can't use modern lingo in something that was set in the 80s. I have read a couple of historical romances that had some references in them that we use now. And that's one thing that'll pull a reader out of a story, and they'll just stop right then and there and not want to read any further because you're using verbiage that does not belong in that time period. Okay. You can have a story set in the future that uses terminology from the past. I know I'm sitting here with my fingers going back and forth as if you can actually see them, but I talk with my hands, so you have to bear with me there. But you can set a story in the future and then use terminology from the past because even today people will ask me, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm groovy, I'm groovy." And that's a really a 60s term. Okay. Now, when you're looking at the timeline, you have to consider how long does this story go on? Does this story take place, everything that happens to these two people, does it happen in the time period of a week, a month, 2 weeks, a year? If you're doing it in the time frame of a year, especially in doing a novella, it's easy to make those 12 months be the 12 chapters, which is the simplest way to do it. Um, I think when I wrote Thirsties in Savannah, it was set over a year, and I used each chapter to break down the months. In some months, I used two chapters to get through the beginning part of the month and the end part of the month in order to do that. When it comes to a man and a woman, a man likes to eat. So in all of my stories, you'll always see them either preparing a meal or having a meal because most of the best conversations that you have them over a meal. Okay. Okay. Our story is set in the year 2020 over a 2 month period of time. But if you look at that slide down in the bottom corner, I've got a wedding day, and the whole story can happen over the course from 2 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night. And there's a lot that can happen at that. At 2 o'clock, they're getting to the church, they're getting ready to, she's in the back getting dressed. He's all nervous and his hands are sweating. Then they go through the ceremony, and then at 2:30, you have them having their rings on. They're already married. Then you fast forward to, the reception where he's taking off the garter, and then they're throwing the bouquet, and then Aunt Sally is out there acting a fool, and his ex shows up. Then at 5 o'clock, they're having dinner, and it's time for the best man to make a toast. The best man is now drunk and telling all of the groom's business, or the time that he and the bride made out. All of that kind of stuff can happen in that timeline. And around 6 o'clock on that wedding day timeline, you'll see where there's a little pair of shoes where they're out there dancing. I love to throw in a character that is irreverent. Says all the wrong things because you know that person. That person is probably related to you, or they work in the cubicle or the office next door to you. So at like this one at 6 o'clock, where they're going to kick up their heels, you can just envision Aunt Sally out there with her dress over her head, or she's doing the bud, or she's out there twerking or doing something very age inappropriate. And then at 9 o'clock, you have the whole thing closing out. That is an example of a timeline. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, see are those any questions. Did you say bridemaid? Probably did. Bridemaid, bridesmaids, or something like that. But there's always somebody at the wedding that's going to act a fool. But when you're writing your timeline, make sure that you sit down and you plot out whether this is happening in a week. So if it's happening in a week, you got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So there you've got 7 chapters. You can take that same 7 chapters, okay, and break them in half. Then you've got Monday morning, Monday afternoon. So now you've got 14 chapters. Okay, if you want to break it down a little bit more with that same 7 days a week and turn it into 21 chapters, and then you've got morning, midday, evening. So now you've got basically a full novel. Okay. Somebody said like Nene on Housewives. Nene is always acting a fool, but she is that character, that irreverent character that's always saying something and doing something that she has no business doing. Okay. So before I go on, are there any questions? We've covered the who, the what, and the when. So are we good? So we covered the timeline. We covered time, whether it's past, present, or future. And we've also covered the timeline. You just posted a long thing that didn't show up. Did it show up in the feed, Karen? Or what was it you were trying to say? Okay, I see you there, Rihanna. Hey, girl. Where's your crown? Okay, so we covered the timeline. Does it occur over a week, a month, a year? And how are you going to really, please try again. Karen, you're going to try again to post your comments? If not, I'll look for them in the feed and I'll come back and I'll address them. Okay. Let's make sure I got everything there before I close this one out and we go on to the next one. The timeline at the bottom is simple. And when you're trying to break down a big piece of action, it's good to break it down in time limits like that. So 2 hours here, 2 hours there. Do we factor in drive time and all of that stuff as well? Okay. Okay, Karen. All right. So we've covered the who, the what, the when. Next, we need to get to the where. And I've got to post a lot of information here because our story is going to be set in space. But although it's set in space, most of it actually occurs on the ship itself. So now I need to really introduce you to the ship. And we got to do some major world building because you need to understand everything it is about the ship. And the where is basically your setting. Yeah, I'm going professor on you. But setting is very critical to a story. So if there are no questions there, okay, is what you need, Karen? I'm covering it? All right, good. All right, so we're going to go from here. We're going to take a little bit of a stop, and I'm going to upload some files, and we're going to get into the where. When I do the where portion, I'm going to upload a file that's going to give you an opportunity to really break down the inside of where your action is taking place, okay? Prime example of that, I'm working on Jerwaine's story. That's Savannah's brother. And Jerwaine basically lives in Savannah's her old condo, or her old townhouse. So with that townhouse, you already know the layout. You know, you come in the door, you got the bathroom right there, the bathroom where she fixed Jesse's cuts from the fight in the garage. You come out of the bathroom, you go around the corner, you know the kitchen is right there. And then once you come out of the kitchen, there's a little dining room table, and then there's the stairs that go upstairs, and then the living room is on the opposite side of the stairs. But we're going to get into all of that in the where. Okay, let me scroll down. All right. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. World building is where people sometimes miss it. I'm going to show you why they miss it, and I'm going to show you how not to miss it, okay? Be back with you in a moment.